I've told this story so many times now, it kind of gets embellished a little bit with each version. So pardon me if I embarrass you a little, okay? So the question is, why women's wrestling? Well, that was an interesting scenario how that came about. We had a nice rainstorm this fall that basically ended up flooding the soccer field and then found its way to the wrestling room as it used to be. And we needed space for our men's program. And so we searched out and found some space that all of a sudden dawned on us that it would hold 2 programs. Well, facilities has been a challenge for us, as we all know, and space to have additional programs falls into that same challenging category. Well, it became pretty clear at that point that women's wrestling was a viable option for us to take a look at and explore a little bit. And as we did that, we found that there were a lot of those pieces that would be in place with obviously the success of our men's wrestling program. So we started down that path about, it seems like 6 months ago, and it may be by now. It's hard for me to believe that this is my 11th month on campus already. But the point being that if you would have asked me 10 months ago what would be the first sport we would add, I doubt that women's wrestling would have been the answer. However, a lot of those tumblers fell into place for us very quickly, and that was the path we decided to pursue. And as you will find out as we get to know Coach DeAnda a little bit more, we couldn't be more pleased with him leading our program for its inaugural season and many years into the future. We went on a path that involved a lot of phone calls, and I have to applaud Coach Schaefer for his help in this process. We scoured the countryside because we wanted to do right by this program since it was our first new offering in a while, and we wanted to have the leadership that we anticipate for all of our programs coming into this program initially. And so after countless phone calls and many hours of debate and evaluation, we finally engaged with Tony, and it just seemed to be from the get-go a natural that he would be a great fit here, and we needed to recruit him so that he knew we were a great fit for him. So, Tony, without any further ado, I'm not going to talk about all the accolades because I would embarrass you. I'll let you do that yourself because I know you self-promote really well. This is the first test, right? Yes. Okay. Without any further ado, Coach DeAnda. Thank
you. Let me bring this down just a notch here. All right, so good morning. I want to say that this is my first ever press conference, so bear with me. But it only adds to the many reasons why I decided to come here and know that I made the right choice to be here. I also want to say that it's an honor and a privilege to be starting the program here at the University of Great Falls. You know, at this time, too, I would also like to thank our Vice President of Athletics, Mr. Dave Gant. And I also would like to thank our president of the university here of Great Falls, Mr. Anthony Aritz. I would also like to thank men's wrestling coach, Caleb Schaefer. He's transitioned me in really easy. He's had several recruits already, and it's just made it an easy transition for me. And I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart for doing a lot of the legwork already. So. I do have a few goals, obviously, and my number one goal is to guide and serve the student athletes here so that they can be successful in both the classroom and on the mat. In the short term, I would like to improve the roster size up to 20 and eventually get to 30 in the following year. We also would like to be competitive nationally. That's a long-term goal, but I think it could also be a short-term goal as well. I think it's very doable in this area. I would like to open it up at this time for questions. And again, I'm very excited to be here, and I look forward to getting to know everybody that's here today and everybody on campus. Thank you.
You talked a little bit about the short-term goals and also being nationally relevant, you mentioned. Can you talk a little more specifically, what kind of a ceiling do you see for this program, not just next year, but in the future?
Well, I really think that the sky's the limit here. With being in this area, we're very close to a lot of states that have girls wrestling sanctioned at the high school level or on the verge of having it sanctioned at the high school level. You've got Washington that's had it sanctioned for many years already. And then Oregon, I think, is another state that's going to have it sanctioned pretty soon. Obviously, California. And then being close to Canada, we look to the possibility of also getting quality student athletes from Canada as well. Yes.
I know you're humble, this is good, but give us a little of your background. Tell us your story.
Okay, all right. This is an easier question for me, sure. I first got involved with women's wrestling in 2005. I was an assistant coach at the Olympic Education Center. It's an Olympic site now that doesn't have women's wrestling anymore, but when I was there for 6 years as an assistant coach, like I said. And then from there, I transitioned to my first head coaching position at the University of Jamestown, which I also served there for 6 years. I've worked with many athletes from different parts of the world and nationally. And then, yeah, those are the opportunities. When I was at Northern Michigan, again, it was an Olympic training center that was on the campus of Northern Michigan, so I got to work with USA Wrestling, which is our national governing body. So that was a great opportunity, and then, like I said, I also got the opportunity to become a head coach, and I jumped at the chance to do that, and I feel very fortunate to be here now. So.
Women's wrestling has a different style of wrestling than the college aspect of it, freestyle. Could you give us some of your background in the freestyle realm? Not just your coaching, but being on the Mexico national team and all that. So. Yes,
I had the pleasure of competing both for Mexico, where I was born, and then I had the pleasure when I became a citizen to also represent Team USA at some Pan Am Championships. I was an athlete, a resident athlete at the Olympic Training Center from 2003 to 2005. Before I started coaching. I've placed at the national tournaments. I've placed at many national events as well. And my claim to fame is I was Real Pro Champion in 2005. So.
What is your decision behind picking these?
One of my first reasons, I have actually 4 reasons, main reasons, is I wanted to piggyback off of the success of Coach Schaefer, and also I know that this is a wrestling community with the success at the high school level, at the college level, and that just tells me that there's a culture of wrestling within this community. The second is just the location of the University of Great Falls, being close to states like Washington and Oregon and California. I think it's a little bit of an easier sales pitch to get recruits from those states being next to Montana, and so it puts the University of Great Falls in a good location to get those recruits to come. So, and then the third one is to be closer to my wife's family, who actually lives in Washington. So that was kind of a personal reason, but it also played a factor. And then the last reason was it gives me an opportunity to get more in tune with my Catholic identity. So that also played a factor. And so those were the four main reasons why I decided that it was a good fit for me to come to the University of Great Falls. Yes?
Just, I guess, with a lot of success that you've had at Jamestown, why go to a school that has never had a wrestling program before?
Well, I mean, again, I talked about location. I see it as a challenge to do that. I think it's a challenge that I'm willing to take on. But there are obviously a lot of positives here. The success of Coach Schaefer, all of those things are very attractive things, and that I want to be a part of a program or an institution that has wrestling in the forefront and is trying to make women's wrestling a premier sport.
And what would you think would be kind of the biggest challenge that you're going to face in this first year?
I think in the first year, it's just, trying to get all the athletes on the same page. I think that's probably the biggest challenge. Them getting to know me and me getting to know them. That takes time. Doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it will take some time. So we don't want to use that as an excuse, though, either. I think that we could be successful in a relatively short amount of time, though. So.
No, go.
You used the phrase student athlete a couple times. What do you see your role as coach in terms of interacting with faculty and your students' academic success? What do you see your contribution in that role?
Well, in the past, we've expected progress reports from our athletes where they're touching base with the professors and the faculty to let us know how they're doing. That way, we're ahead of situations so that if they need help, we can get them the help that they need. So typically, I've done like an 8-week and a 12-week. So then we also have midterms, and so that's the role that I would play so that I know what's going on. That way, I'm communicating with the athlete, and I'm also in touch with the professors as well. I think that's important. Otherwise, things can go in the wrong direction if you're not on top of things like that. And it's important to let the professors know when we're going to be going on trips. And just to follow up because we have their best interest in mind. At the end of the day, they need to get their degree. They may be here competing, but still, I mean, that's only for a short while. You want to be able to use your degree for the rest of your life. So, welcome. Kel.
Could you maybe brief us on some of the student athletes that you've already signed and kind of the high hopes for them, and then maybe on how you will grow women's wrestling in the state of Montana?
Okay. Great questions, great questions. Well, right now we have 2 athletes that are local products, so we got that we have signed. It's Abby Gontrak, who's from, I believe, Laurel, Montana. She's a lightweight, so we're excited about that. We also have Austin Wortman, who I believe is from Wolf's Point, Montana. So in order to be able to grow women's wrestling, I think it's important to have local athletes, student athletes come to our program. So in addition to that, we have some athletes from the state of Washington. We have Elsa Gonzalez, who was the state champ this past year, so we're expecting big things out of her. And then we also have a lightweight that's very talented in Celicia Lee. In addition to that, we've got a few transfers from Southwestern Oregon Community College. We have All-American Tatum Sparks, and we have our teammates who are upperweights, Kay Tehutu, who I believe is from Hawaii, and then Kaylin Hicksenbaugh, who is from Washington. So those are, in total, I believe we have right around 15 athletes that have signed or verbally committed. So we're looking to, I think attaining the 20 is very doable before the start of the school year. So, and Linda, I didn't answer your question completely. The last question, I think, is how are we gonna grow the sport of women's wrestling within the state? Well, I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to be starting the Argo Wrestling Club June 6th, I believe is the start date. Is that correct? Yeah. The June 6th. And then I also want to work and partner up with our women's state director, Rich Vasquez. I have worked with him in the past when I was at my last employer, and I want to continue that partnership with him a little more in depth just because I'm in the state now. And I know that he works with a lot of the high school athletes that go to Fargo, and I've worked with some of his athletes at different camps. And then the last thing is we're going to have some home events throughout this. We're going to have many home events here, and then we're going to have some other, I think it's in Columbia Falls, we're looking to duel. So we're trying to get the exposure of women's wrestling so the state knows what women's wrestling is all about. And maybe there's a lot of people that have never seen women's wrestling, and so then we can do that right in state with home events and also in Columbia Falls and through obviously the state director and our new wrestling club, Argo Wrestling Club, that starts on June 6th. So. Yes.
Tony, what would you say your coaching style or techniques are to your female wrestlers? You know, females can be stubborn as it is, and I'm sure wrestlers are probably to the next level. So, you know, elaborate on that for us a little bit.
Well, you know, I try to keep things really basic. Number one, I have to be very patient. You know, it's a balance. You you have to understand that things do take time, but they don't have to take forever. A lot of my coaching style or philosophy is, in terms of wrestling itself, is to stay basic. There's things like a lot of hand fighting. This is terminology or jargon maybe that's not familiar unless you're within the sport, but it's a lot of pressure, controlling the tie, basic offense, but defense is also important. So we try to cover all those areas. But wrestling is a type of sport where you can make it very simple or you can make it really complex in a hurry, and I think keeping it simple is always probably the best option. So thank you. Hopefully that answered your question.
All right, I think unless anyone has any other questions,
Where did you wrestle collegiately?
Collegiately, I wrestled 2 years at the University of Augustana University. It used to be Augustana College, and then I transferred to the University of Nebraska for my last 3 years. So
So you did a pretty nice job in Augustana. National tournament?
yes, I placed fourth when I was at Augustana, and I went to the national tournament twice when I was at Nebraska.
It's like getting let out of the tournament.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I appreciate your hospitality and all the questions, and I'll look forward to working with everyone here on campus and in the community. Thank you.
thanks,